Hi everyone, my name is Stephen Simon and welcome back to CSharpCorner live episode. In this episode of Ask Me Anything series, we have Randy who will be joining us from United States and he's going to talk us about user experience. He's going to take us through if user experience is meant for you, what are the career aspects of UX, and also he's going to talk about the ROI and the different phases that's needed for the user experience development. And this session is going to be really, really interesting as user experience is very core and is very near to any of the development that we do. It may be web development, it may be mobile development, or it may be a desktop application that we make. So anyone who's watching this live show, if you have any queries regarding user experience or it may be a user interface, you can just drop all your questions in the comment section below that we have during the live broadcast. And Randy will be joining us and he will answer all your questions during the live show itself. So having said that, let me bring the guest in the show.
Hey, hello world. How you
Hi, Randy.
doing?
How are you?
All right. Let me get my presentation up here. I need to make sure that everybody can see that first of all.
Well, we
So,
can
share
really see you.
screen. I'll share. Here we go. Okay.
Perfect. I get
You
to
can
see
see
your
it.
screen. That makes sense. So, Randy, tell me who you are, what you do, and so that our audience can get an idea and what we are going to talk about today.
Hello. Hi, I'm Randy, and I have a developer background. I worked for a long time doing various forms of development. I've done Java, I've done C Sharp, and of course, various different web technologies surrounding that. I have always had a passion for not just the behind the scenes code, but doing the front end development and thinking about the design and how happy users were with the products that I created. So, I have decided that at this point in my career, I've started up my own biz called UX Stars LLC and a website, uxstars.com. And I aim to help people take their user experiences to the next level. And I want to talk with you today about what UX is. Not just, oh, hey, it's this thing that you need to know about. It's maybe it's for you. Maybe you have some other form of specialty, right? There's no right or wrong here. But I'm going to save you some time. And if by the end of this presentation, my goal, if anything, is to make you think, that's not who I am, fine. Or to make you think, I was born to do this, all right? And it's not just for you on an individual level. On a company level, if you leave this and you think, I don't need UX, then I failed. Because at a company level, you know, you will definitely need to have good user experiences if you want to keep your users. So, can everybody hear me okay? Loud and
Yeah, I
clear?
think Randy, we can surely hear you. I think maybe your voice is a little low, maybe.
I can adjust that here.
So I even texted you on LinkedIn, Randy. So that's about is your audio a little
Maybe
low?
I'll
I'm not
send you
sure if you
some new
got time.
speakers. I don't know. And it's all about different perspectives.
Yeah.
So today, here are some of the things we're going to cover. You've seen this. What is UX? We, of course, want to talk about the return on investment. We're not doing this just for fun, though it can be fun. UX trips, in other words, pitfalls or things to avoid. UX job types. There's not just like, I'm a UX guy. There's a whole bunch of jobs that are related to the field. And this is not even a UX 101 that I'm going to give today. This is going to be a here's what UX is, and I'm opening like the door so that if you want to, there's next steps that you can take, and there's so much free information out there. All right. So, when I was preparing for this presentation, I wanted to make a comparison that would help connect with you. And a presentation is a form of UX. Now, often we're thinking in terms of I'm designing a form or a web portal or whatever, but even this presentation here, I can think about it in terms of UX, right? I want to know who my users are, right? In this case, you're my users right now, all right? And I wanted to know about you because if I do this presentation and they're like, Randy, that really didn't resonate with us, I'll be like, oh, well, that's a bummer. So I wanted to say, who are you, and let me know about you, because then I can cater and customize the experience, and hopefully it resonates more with you. So obviously this is C#Corner, so a lot of you have been programmers. I mean, if this chart was off, I would have been like, what's going on? Thankfully, that didn't happen. Specialized in UX, great. If I got a lot of people who are in my circle, in sort of my sphere on LinkedIn and all, then like they would have been like, oh, UX is so awesome. Everybody needs, of course they would be. And they would be telling me everything that, a lot of what I agree with UX. I want to say, okay, where are you right now? Where can I meet you right now with your comprehension? And of course, in UX, you'll hear about a term of personas. Now, that is done in a variety of different ways, but here I'm looking at your titles. I said, who are you? What do you do? And so here's who I'm expecting to be talking with today, okay? Now, some of you are in a leadership type position, some of you are more practitioner, and it's for varied. And so let's continue here. Now, on this one here, UX means how a screen looks. Now, a lot of people do think that it's just the pretty stuff. Oh, just add a little razzle dazzle to the screen, add a wow effect. Um, it's important to have good cosmetics on your websites, right? There's a certain professional gloss that can help you get customers and look professional. But that is just like this one part of UX. And I, if nothing else, I hope by the end of this that you realize that if you're hiring somebody to do UX, it's more than just like the pretty stuff. And sometimes you might have somebody who's more the artistic side, and somebody who's more the research side, or front end coding side, or just front end mock up side. But those are sort of different aspects of this. Now, I'm jumping into a screen here. I like to play a game called Rocket League with my boys, and so this is a screen, right? So, but you can see there's lots of art type stuff going on right here. But one thing I brought up with my UX colleagues is I said, hey, look at this in the upper right hand corner. I was trying to get some credits because my boy wanted some new wheels and whatnot for his car, right? Now, at the upper right hand corner, it says 0 credits. So I was clicking on that, right? But nothing was happening. And all the way down here is where you can buy credits, right? Now, Rocket League's got amazing, UX and UI and whatnot. But in this particular example, I was trying to draw attention to the fact that UX can have a clear line to revenue, right? If somebody's going up here saying, I don't have any credits left, nothing's happening, there's a possibility they won't buy any credits that day. So this is one of those factors we call proximity, right? You would ideally want to have those two things close to each other, okay? So I'm trying to show you, yes, there is the appearance in all of the web page, but there's also thinking about how things are laid out, and a lot more than that. So if UX was purely visual, then why, when I took a course by David Travis, would he have started by talking about can openers? All right. Now, don't worry. I'm not setting you up to be can opener designers. You're more in the digital realm. Great. And so am I. But even when he was talking about can openers, he was talking about things like, well, first of all, we have to start with the user. What are their problems, right? You got your Swiss Army knife can opener there. That's great if you need to have something in your pocket and you're going hiking, right? But the other ones are more ergonomic. So maybe if you have some arthritis, you'll be better off with those. So it's not always a case of this thing is purely better than that thing. Sometimes it's this is better for this person and this is better for that person. And we need to know who our users are so we make sure that we're giving them all the best options. So, a definition of user experience from 1993. User experiences encompasses all aspects of the end user's interaction with the company, its services, and its products. Now, of course, sometimes it might not even be, it's like a company, right? You might just be designing something for like a nonprofit group or something along those lines, but I think you get it. It's more than just the screen, and I'll give you some other examples along the way to help that resonate. So, 10 usability heuristics for user interface design. All right, we've got some things here that might seem a little, I think the word might be esoteric. They might not match up precisely with the way that you think about things. I'm not going to read everyone out loud. And in fact, you can Google this or see this on my website in much more detail where these things will make sense. all I'm trying to say that as you do go through trying to make sure that something has good UX, it's good to have some form of checklist. And a lot of them do really base back to this, and then they branch out into much more detail of things that might make a bit more sense on what you're doing day to day. All right. So in programming, a lot of things are Boolean. All right, that's a light switch I have in my home. It should be pretty familiar to everybody. Boolean, on, off, 0, 1. There's a lot of stuff that's just one way or the other in programming. Now, I know that there's that's an overgeneralization, but the row got inserted or it didn't. The computer's on or it's off, right? And UX, I tend to think of it more as a dial, right? More fine tuning and all those different heuristics, right? You can sort of crank up the volume and whatnot on those. So, when I am consulting with folks, I realize there's constraints, right? Maybe they have a time constraint. Maybe they can only spend so much money on UX. Maybe it's just not practical to implement something in a perfect way for the users, but we're still trying to turn that dial and make sure that we can do the best with what we have. So I did see in the comments for the survey that somebody felt like, UX was based on opinions, but it's not only based on opinions. But I'm glad they said that, right? Because some people will think this. And like, if you have two people on a team and they're like, I think this is better for the user and I think this is better for the user. And then they're like, no, it's my way. And guess what? You could do a usability test because what matters is what works out better for the users. And there's a type of approach called jobs to do. You give a users a job, right? You do a usability test. You watch them. You actually observe them doing this thing. You want to see, can they complete the task? What kind of mistakes did they do? There's even eye tracking software that can see where they're looking on the screen. There's all kind of ways that you can actually test how well they got through that process, all right? And, it's just have the users settle that stuff for you by actually seeing how well they do with it. There's all kind of mathematical metrics to go along with this. And UX, there's the qualitative side, which I lean more towards. And then for all the math folks out there, there's the quantitative side. And you can, do visualizations to your heart's content, trying to, understand what the population, how they react to systems. So, okay, if you're still thinking that UX is just the pretty stuff, I don't know if you have stoplights like this where you are. This is a bit of an antique stoplight, but I put it up here.
We still do have these one.
Okay, well, I had some stoplights in my area, and I couldn't tell what light color they were until I was underneath them. Now, I think you can tell what a problem might be beyond just pretty stuff if nobody can tell what color the traffic lights are, all right?
Yeah.
So I have this example here for a couple of reasons. One, say, there could be life or death consequences with some of the UX stuff you're making, all right?
Indeed.
And not only that, but it used to be a lot simpler to say, oh, well, usability is like when you're sitting down at your computer in 1995 or whatever, and like there with the keyboard. Guess what? We've got the whole Internet of Things world now, and so much stuff is connected with technology, and it's gotten really blurred. Like, am I interacting with an object, like just an ergonomically designed object, or am I designing with a smart object, right? And so that's where UX, definitely goes beyond things. If you're talking with one of your voice assistants, and I try to sometimes remove a song from my playlist, and it's like, sorry, I cannot remove songs from your playlist right now. And I'm like, that was not a great experience. I don't want to hear that song anymore in that playlist.
Yeah.
It was a live version of the song. I wanted the original, so help me. All right. Another quick example, the fuse box in my basement. All right. I don't know if your fuse boxes look the same where you are, but like, okay, I got a bunch of switches. I have no way of knowing which is which. On the left side, I have this. Nothing is lined up. And then it's really cute. The numbers are just sort of indented on the gray. I can barely even read the 1 and the 3 and the 5, right? And when am I maybe down there? Possibly I'm down there when the fuse blew. And so I'm trying to figure out with some little flashlight which one to flip back on. All right, so UX is a lot of times digital. And for the audience here today, of course, that's what our focus is. But I want to say that after this presentation, if I got you thinking, which is really my main goal, I want to make you have something click in your head. You're going to look around, and there's probably going to be some things around you today, and you're going to question why they did it that way. And you're going to say, well, what if they did it that way? And then, if that kind of thing is something you can't stop thinking about, guess what? You know, you're going to want to learn more about UX. All right, consequences of bad UX. I'm not going to read each one of these verbatim, but if somebody's on your website and they can't find the product that they're looking for, guess what? They're not going to buy it. All right, if they're having trouble with your website and they're calling up tech support, you're going to have more tech support calls. If you go and you push out something in a product release, and then like everybody's having, all these problems, then you might have to have another release. Now, you might be saying there, well, that's the role of QA to catch the problems. Well, there are some similarities in ensuring the quality of, the bugs, as far as ensuring in addition to ensuring the quality of the user experiences. So, when I talk developers and QA and business analysts, I tend to think less in siloed effect, that there's a lot of sort of overlap. You may be familiar with Venn diagrams. Like, people are always throwing around Venn diagrams on social media where I am, where they're showing that things have some differences and some similarities. That's the world we live in. All right, now my friend Debbie Levitt, who's also big on UX and CX, this is one way that she likes to look at it. Now, previously I showed you the 10 Heuristics by Don Norman, and this is the way she looks at UX. She's got, okay, your sort of your enemies are frustration for the users, confusion for the users, disappointments, and distraction. And so I'll just pick out one of those right now. Distraction. All right. So feature creep. You might know that sometimes you have been on a project and people are like, let's add another feature. They wanted this. They wanted this. What is? Well, I always say that everything on the screen is going to distract or compete with something else on the screen. So there's going to be some tough choices you have to make and some careful considerations, because otherwise, you can't make everything red flashing and blinking on your website, right? There's going to be trying to make sure that the call to actions are the things that stand out the most so that users convert or do the types of things that you're expecting them to do on your website. All right. I was in a little bit of a rush, so I took a screenshot here from the Interaction Design Foundation. They are kind of where I go. It takes a lot to convince me that they're not going to be giving me the best advice on UX. And so for all the managers and leaders or even company owners out there, ROI from good UX is a no-brainer. Like, you can read everything here. It says boosted overall revenue conversion, increased customer satisfaction, lower support calls, reduced development waste, and reduced risk of building the wrong thing. All right. And so, I suggest you read into this more and see everything that they've got to say on their site as far as that goes. But in UX and in anything, right? You can just say, you know what, we're never going to release this product. We're just going to keep making it better and better and then push it out the door. Yeah, there's going to be constraints, all right? But you don't want to just put something out there and put all this work into it and then find out that, oh, I didn't understand that about the users. Man, we wasted a few months building something they didn't need. I think most of us want to make sure that the things we build are something where the user's using it and they're at least satisfied. Like, if you do good UX, a user may even take it for granted. And, you want to stand out, you want to be rewarded and recognized. But, like, if you have really good UX, that's the kind of thing that the user won't even notice it. Think about it this way. Like, if you're going to go into a grocery store, at least where I am, the doors just open like magic. It's like you're using the Force, all right? You're not seeing the sensors and everything that's making that happen. It just happens. You just take it for granted. That's what doors do, right? And so that's what the good UX is when it almost just blends into the background. Anyone can do UX well is another question I had there. It was good to see this one. All right. You're realizing that some people, they're just not meant for UX. But like, we need all kinds in this world. I'm big on diversity, right? I'm not a mainframe programmer. They scare the heck out of me. COBOL, oh my gosh. It's like the thing of my nightmares. I was always locking up screens back in the day when I had to, use it a little bit here and there. And, that does have its own UX too. But there's database folks, there's people who are doing like batch jobs and everything like that. That's great. I'm not saying you have to learn to do UX. We need you too. We need you to focus on the types of things that are your thing, right? And it's just some people will be more geared towards this, right? And if you're geared towards this, so help me, you can learn how to do it, all right? But if it's not your thing, there's plenty of other things for you to do in this world, all right? I like this quote by Leonardo da Vinci, going back a few hundred years. Simplicity is the ultimate sophistication, right? And so this is jumping ahead a little bit. One of the traps of UX is that if you give people a simple user experience, there will be sometimes in management folks that say, this was a really simple screen you designed. Why do we even keep you around, right? Oh, you know, that's what you have to watch out for, because the more simple that you have it for the users, it can take a lot of work to make things simple for the users. If you have a really great user experience on something and it felt really simple and you didn't have to do anything extra that you didn't expect, there was probably a lot of thought and study behind that. All right. I think UX is. Wow, valued correctly. I mean, I would wonder after this presentation if people would say the same way, right? Because if there's never enough time to test with the real users, and if you're not hiring folks who've been trained at least in some way in UX, if you're not paying the UX folks well, um, you know, is it really valued correctly, right? Like if you get to the end of the project and you're saying, let's add the UX now, instead of like thinking about that much earlier in the process, and then there's not enough time to like actually make it satisfy the UX, that's the problem. I've been on teams too where it's like we get to the end and now we're like, let's show it to the users. Like a big part of UX is trying to pull some of that back, right? It can be like, oh no, I'm not ready to show this yet, right? But there are ways to approach it where you can show things much earlier and it can save you tons and tons of time. And it should just be less headaches and fire drills for you. All right. Now, you're probably wondering to yourself why there might be a unicorn on the screen. I'll get to that. I was wondering about the unicorn too at first. So, I associate UX mostly with front-end developers is the winner here. There's UX specialists too. So, when I started to sort of focus more on UX than just some of my, development and front-end development things, I became aware of a term called a unicorn. And so some people cannot grasp the idea that somebody can do development and they can do UX. It just like it boggles their minds. They're just like their mind is blown. They consider you to be a mythical creature. Now, sometimes people mean this in a complimentary way, like, wow, that's just amazing. And then other times they're going to say, oh, you're a jack of all trades, a master of none, which is possibly one of my least favorite phrases in the whole human vocabulary, because you can be good at different things. But at the same time, there are times and places for specialists, all right? You might have a big company, you might have a small company, you might have a startup company. There's no one blanket rule that says everything has to be one way. I am a firm believer that some people can code and be good at UX. It can be hard to keep all those skills up to date, but it can be done because I've done it. All right. Now, it's not for everybody, and I am choosing to focus more on UX. But, I just want you to be aware of this aspect that sometimes you'll have specialists who are just, I am a UX this or that. And other times you will have a front end developer who also knows about UX. You're like, why is there a microscope now, Randy? The first there was a unicorn, now there's a microscope. What are you doing? All right. So it's all about changing your focus. If you're somebody who's able to zoom in and zoom out from something, then, that is probably something where you're like, oh, well, today my focus is really thinking about the user requirements, talking with users, meeting with users, analyzing user data, right? And then tomorrow I'm going to dig into that code and zoom in on the functions and, all that, CSS and the HTML and like the database, right? If you can zoom in and zoom out, that's possibly a case where you will be able to go along that route. So, oh boy, a 3-month boot camp can teach me everything that I need to know about UX. Oh, so this may have been the way that I worded it. You're scaring me a little bit here, because, I have some degrees that relate to this, and I go to conferences. I read articles all the time. I have more books than I can read through on the subject yet. I'm like constantly trying to take in this information. There's all these online webinars where us people with doctorate degrees are getting together trying to learn more about UX. And so perhaps, maybe what you were thinking here is that in your particular role, you can learn what you need to know about UX. Okay, well then that's different. It's the way I phrased it, perhaps. However, what I should have phrased this as is saying, can I learn all that there is to know about UX, right? My wording there, right? Even my wording can affect how this whole thing was done. So surveys, and when you think about surveys, a lot of the things that you think about surveys are transferable to UX, not that surveys are the only way to do UX. Okay, so if you think that a boot camp can teach you everything that there is to know about UX in a couple months, this is a diagram by another CX expert and UX expert, Darren Hood, and he calls this the 4 pillars of UX, right? Now, I'd be here a while if I had to read everything, okay? This is something he put together where he tried to group up all the different aspects of UX and all the things that you can learn and specialize in and dig into and learn more about. So if you do some kind of course, and even if it said, hey, I'm a UX course, well, you still have so much more to learn, whether that's good or bad for you. There's so much to learn out there. You don't have to learn everything. You can specialize. You can see what's needed in the job market, where you are. You can see what resonates with you. It's always a combination of those two things, right? But there's a lot more than you will have in your lifetime of learning. Like, even in development, guess what? Like, it's no longer, hey, I went to college. I learned everything I needed to know. We're all lifelong learners now, right? So, if you do some kind of boot camp, any kind of education is going to teach you things, right? But, there's always more to learn as well. Okay, so coding must be completed before usability testing can begin. All right, so no, there are ways to do it where you can do some kind of prototyping. And back in the day, I did a lot of my prototyping in HTML, right? And then I actually made that into the real thing, right? But I also showed people screenshots, whether they were just in PowerPoint or whatever, or maybe little videos to make them feel like the system was real and doing things. And I watched them, and I tried to see if they were confused, And it has to be very much a mindset of saying, I'm not testing you, the user, right now while you look at my thing. I'm testing the system. I'm testing the thing that I created, right? And so my buddy Meet Shah from Mumbai that I met on LinkedIn, he is going to be giving a future presentation all about prototyping technology in today's age and different options and benefits from prototyping and showing some of that stuff to the users early on, all right? So he didn't know he was going to be in this presentation, so perhaps he'll be surprised by some of the LinkedIn invites he gets later today. That'd be great. It'd be like, Randy, what's going on? That would
See, he got
that would make
featured,
my
right?
So, my manager knows what is best for the users.
Oh, I
Oh,
love this slide.
danger zone. Oh, no. Okay, you can't defy the manager. Okay, so, or, what are you supposed to do, right? You want things that are best for the user, and then your manager says, do this thing. I know best. It can be awkward. All right, so this is really a dangerous time, possibly for you. If you're in UX and you decide that you're going to be a user advocate, there's going to be some approaches that you need to know as far as doing some usability tests. So it's not you arguing with the manager, but showing them results and finding out how to explain to them that what you're doing accomplishes what they value. Who's the king? All right, you, your boss, marketing, your CEO, or the user, right? If things are stacked up and your boss thinks that they're the king, and that the users are, they don't know what they're doing or anything, well, that's going to lead to some problems for you, right? But if the boss feels like they report to the users, like the users are above them, well, then this can happen, right? And so when I'm talking with you today, I'm just trying to get everybody to go out to take all the UX classes they can get. Some of the managers who might be listening to this, I just want you to realize that the value of doing UX in the right way and the approaches that are out there so that you can support the people who are the practitioners of doing the UX and trying to make things better for the customers, right? Because then they'll need your support, right? If they're trying to tell you about these usability heuristics that they're trying to improve, the KPIs, key performance indicators and whatnot, I'm trying to sort of open your mind to say, oh, that's right. Randy talked about the ROI. These things can actually bring us value. They can help us keep customers. They can increase our profits. All right. And so, to me, the customer is king. I fight for the user. All right. And as long as I'm in an organization where the whole company sort of feels that way, that the users are paramount, we're good. So, Randy, why are you showing two people in a factory? Okay, you're supposed to go out and actually see users in their real environments, right? We're behind our desks. Well, actually, a lot of us are at home right now at our desks. But in times when we can go out, it is good as a UX research practice to actually go out and see our users in their natural environments, right? What is the context of everything that they're doing? Is it a noisy environment? Is it a dangerous environment? Are there bright lights? Is it dark? When you actually go and see where they are, where they're trying to use your software, and see the actual interactions, you might notice that people are doing certain workarounds, or there's certain things that you say, oh, in my application I could have done this. So in the UX research realm, it's important to actually go out and see your users. Now, of course, there's constraints today. People are coming up with all kind of, tips for if you have to do certain things remotely, because we can have limited mobility at the moment. But the key is not to just be behind your desk. You can't just be an island, right? You have to go out and make sure I'm seeing how people really do stuff, how they really use my thing, the world they really live in. And that's not just like how you think it is. Assumptions and getting rid of the assumptions are such a major part of UX. UX traps. Now, I want to leave enough time for questions. I won't read everything here. But ego is one of them, right? It's being self-centered, not just like, I don't mean like a greedy form of self-centered, but like thinking, this is what I like. This is how I like to do it. I like the color red, so I'll make my website red and I'll make the buttons red. Okay, you have to think, how will other people perceive that? Not just, everyone who you think of as like you, but yesterday was a global accessibility day, right? You also have to factor in how people can do if their vision is bad, their hearing's bad, or other various disabilities. All right, so that is a whole nother thing that lots of folks are trying to learn and specialize in right now. Accessibility, right? Where to start, Randy? It's a whole big world that you just presented us. Well, the Interaction Design Foundation has some of the titles here. There's a lot more titles that people are coming up with. It's sometimes, you know, same thing happens everywhere, but there's a whole bunch of flavors of titles. Here are some of the branches. So even if you don't take courses from the IDF, I suggest you take a look at the career paths that they have there, because it'll help you think ahead. What appeals to you? Where you want to end up? And if you say, I want to be a UX UX or user researcher, click on that. You'll see what kind of courses are going to take, right? And you'll say, that's me or that's not me. That's valued where I am, or it's not valued where I am. And that will sort of help get you to be like, okay, so my end goal is that I want to be this thing. These are the kind of things I want to learn. And whether or not you take one of their courses there, it will sort of help you understand what you need to learn to be that. Biggest thing I think about UX is ego. You want to try to get rid of this is all about me. Even with the survey that I did here, I thought it looked pretty darn good, and then I showed it to a couple of people, and I made some modifications because they said, "Oh, Randy, you shouldn't just give people a choice of, agree or disagree. You should add a not sure option." So Meet said, "Hey, Randy, they're new to UX. You shouldn't force them into a yes or no." And I was like, "Fine, all right, thank you for your feedback." So a huge part of UX is getting feedback and learning how to take it and provide it without like hurting everybody's feelings, because it's just like we all sort of can sometimes, see our own zone, see things a certain way with our own biases. And a huge part of UX is just trying to be like, well, what do you think when you see this? Like, how do you react to it, right? So I did show you a definition by Don Norman of UX. And I just want to give you a heads up that when you delve into the world of UX, there are going to be some people who are referred to as gatekeepers. They are meaning to be helping out with UX, but they may have very strict interpretations of how UX is to be done. And Joe Natoli is a UX leader, and here you might be surprised by this. He is saying that nobody owns the definition of what UX is. No one, including and especially me. That might seem odd at first for a expert in the field of UX to be saying. He's got tons of courses where he's teaching you what to do, but yet he is humbling himself to say, do what makes sense for you. Yes, learn a lot. Don't think that you know everything. Take the courses, explore things, try things out where you are. But, you know, don't let yourself get defeated if somebody says, oh, what you're doing is not real UX, all right? It's a spectrum, all right? It's not just an on or an off. There are lots of different heuristics that you can go by, tests and best practices, and you'll find what works for you. You'll find folks that resonate with you and where you are and what you're doing, and that's great. All right. I just don't want you to be turned away from UX if somebody says, oh, that's not UX. Oh, you're not doing it right. You know, the users are the ones who decide whether or not the UX we're doing is right and the results we get there. All right. So, like I said, this hasn't really been a UX 101 per se, right? My website was created for very talks like this. I said, okay, if I'm going to talk with somebody at a coding conference and I'm going to say, hey, here's this thing called UX. I can't explain everything in an hour or 2 hours or whatever, but you know what? I want to open the door and say, you know, I've made a source out here. And I try to humble myself as well. And a lot of the stuff here isn't content that I've created. I'm linking you out to like wonderful sources out there. And, you know, you've got your gurus that you can look up to. Maybe you're in a different field right now for career transitions. There's so many global events right now where you can get for free. Like I could have never gone to some of these conferences far away from me. But right now there's a lot of things online for free or inexpensive. You can attend anywhere in the world, right? And after our talk, I'm going to put a section into the Randy's Corner section there where I'll try to list out some references based on the questions that people might have asked, because when you're asking me the questions, we'll have limited time and I do want to make sure that I answer them, but I'll stick things into the Randy's Corner as far as saying, okay, people ask this, you know, here's what you need to know about that, or here's the link. All right, tons of online learnings, you know, capabilities and whatnot. And so, you know, I encourage you to check out uxstars.com, you know, and just take a look around, see what suits you, see what you'd like to know, and go from there. And that concludes my presentation. I mean,
That's great,
we
Randy.
can have questions now, but that includes Randy, you know, going on and on about his slides.
Indeed, I think there's a lot to be taken away from the first half and 40 minutes of this live broadcast. You started talking about how your user experience can affect your revenue. You also talked about user experience is also sometimes UI, but also it can be a car dashboard or any of the place that you're moving. A lot involves through the user experience. I think some of the people are really going to love that manager slide. I think that is something.
I almost wanted to say, managers, close your eyes, don't look. You know, there's a reason when I did the survey, I didn't want personally identifiable information.
So I think that's a really nice presentation. One thing that Brandy, we would surely like to know is whenever we update any of the product, how do you actually decide which features to add? I mean, how do you actually validate or reject a hypothesis in order to create a new solution? How do you actually decide it?
All right, how do you actually decide? Well, that's going to be a big, you know, a lot of people are UX researchers, all right? They're
Yeah.
trying to say, okay, what are the unmet needs right now? I mean, if you have a live system already, you probably are sitting on a whole bunch of things that you can dig into. You can see what problems people are having, right? You can see what calls people are calling in with, needing help with. And so you're going to want to see what the biggest pain points are and where you can make the biggest impact by making some changes. So, you know, there's the whole ROI slide, right? And I just had sort of a snippet of that article. But when you look at that, It will give you a lot of feeling for I will get a benefit for actually doing this. And like I said, we all have constraints. I understand that. It's when people try to do any kind of perfection. You may have heard the term analysis paralysis, and it's
Yeah.
it's like when you're just like, but what would be perfect, right? And I think there's somebody says a quote of like, perfection is the enemy of good. All right, so you
Okay.
want to make these things good. You want to know what's good, but you'll say, okay, what problems are my real, my main users having, right? And so you'll not want to just ask them questions. You'll want to do certain usability tests. So if you're not sure where people are struggling with your website, you know, I almost had a slide in here that said if you're doing UX right, it's going to feel like you're doing an open book test. All right,
Mm.
it's going to
Yeah.
almost feel like cheating because you could just go to your users and watch them, right? If you're like, oh, I wonder where people are having trouble with the website, like just like recruit some users, give them a job, say, okay, I want you to sign up on this website. Okay, I want you to buy a product on this website. Okay, I want you to take this action or that. Watch them, see where people are struggling. All right.
That's perfectly makes sense, Randy. One question from YouTube Bhaskar Das goes and asks is how to measure that my UX is good? Is there any way to analyze it?
Oh yeah, there's tons of ways to analyze it, and the links that I'm going to put into the Randy's Coffee Cup, Randy's UX Corner on my website. Later today, I will be putting more things in there. The qualitative side of UX research, has tons of different ways that you can analyze that data, and I could try to summarize everything here now, but it's like, what kind of mistakes are people making on your websites? Are they not using features that you put all this effort into? How do you measure that things are good? There's another interesting, there's a book called The Lean Startup. And
Yeah,
the
yeah,
Lean
yeah,
Startup, I love that book. It talks about all these
yeah,
neat ways where you can measure
yeah.
things. Some websites even do this interesting technique, which I've never done before, where they put out two versions of the website simultaneously, and then
Mhm.
they just sort of see which ones they get more of the conversion that they want. Like,
Mhm.
so for example, like say they're trying to increase sales of a certain type of product, they'll make it so that half the users get sent to like one website and half the users get sent to another website, and then they'll see which one makes the sales increase, right?
Yeah.
That is one way to do it. I haven't launched two separate versions of my website, but there are companies that go to that extent, right? And when you're running a test like that, see, what they bring up in that book is it's good to have it simultaneous, because if you were to do it like in January of this year versus now, well, yeah, it's really hard to tell. It's like any kind of experiment, right? A lot of it is the scientific process to an extent, right? You're trying to have your control variables and trying to make sure that the conclusions you're making are accurate. So yes, there is a very much a science to that. It's not all opinion. You're going to have certain goals for the UX things that you're doing, and then there's lots of ways you can measure them. And on my website, in the Randy's Corner part, I will be putting some more information regarding that.
That totally makes sense, Randy. I think when you said people do have two versions of the same website, I think to add to it, I think Facebook does have it. The way I use Facebook on is totally different than my friends use it.
Mm,
They still do not have those features.
yeah, yeah. They,
Yeah.
you know what, and what I'll also say there too is like, it's interesting because yeah, sometimes they'll want to test a feature with a smaller audience. It's not always just like a
Yeah.
true like A/B test, right? Sometimes they're
Yeah.
like, hey, try this part, but we're only gonna make a few of you suffer from it if it's
Yeah.
bad. It's like I'm mixed in how I feel about that, because if okay, so here's the thing. Some people are all about like it's okay to fail these days, and I'm like, well, it depends on what you mean there, right? Because you're affecting people's real lives with some of this technology, and if you roll stuff out
Yep.
to production, right? You can have real serious impacts on somebody. Like, right, if you do something that crashes their phone and they can't make a call during an emergency because you just wanted to throw the feature out there and like fail and just see how it worked out, that's not cool.
Yeah.
All right, so you
Yeah.
are going to want to take certain test audiences in certain cases and make sure that you do try to make sure those things, are good ahead of time. Now, if you have something less consequential, like a post on Facebook, it should be a little less life or death. And, maybe
Yeah.
that's the way to go, right? Because then you're
Yeah.
really seeing how things are working in a real live environment and the adoption rate.
Yeah, I think many people will be able to relate with many of this Skype preview option coming and Facebook new version coming. Facebook new version sometimes doesn't support video broadcasting, and when you can go and actually watch the videos, Skype preview does not allow you to do group calling in some cases. So I think
Hmm.
Skype preview will get us in trouble sometime, right?
Yeah, that's that. You raise a very interesting point there, and that
Yeah,
has to go back with the expectations in the Four Horsemen slide, where right,
yeah.
if you raise the expectation that software should work a certain way, but somehow you have a different version of it, that's kind of funky. Because back when we were so focused on desktop applications, we had a situation where people, oh, well, which version of the desktop application are you on? Are you on, 1.1, 1.2, 1.3, 1.4, right? And the magic of the web was supposed to be like everybody's on the same version all the time, right?
Yeah.
There's no worrying about. Of course, they have different browsers and stuff like that. It's like a whole nother headache. But at least you knew they were on the same version of the website. But so that you're right, you run the risk in a certain case of if making people expect a website will do something, you tell somebody else, oh, click on that button. They're like, there's no button that does that. So yeah, no, I think that's
Yeah.
I didn't even pick that up from the Lean Startup book, but I think you have an excellent observation there.
Yeah. So adding to it, Randy, there's a lot of change happening in the field of UI and UX. But people sometimes work on material UI, and there's a lot of the stuffs and different libraries available out there that helps you but develop your user experience using different libraries and packages. So, what do you think, Randy, as we go ahead in 2020 and we are looking at a entire new decade? For some reason it didn't go well, it didn't start well. What do you think is going to be the next big trend coming for
That,
for
you understate things like I do. It's great. So it didn't start as well as it might have. Oh gosh. So what do I think is sort of next for UX and some things to keep in mind? One thing that does draw me to UX is that like the world changes, right? But people change less. I mean, people do change, right? But you're still working with certain psychology that goes there. So it appeals to me to learn more about how the human mind works. And I know that situations will change, but I can apply some of that to what has changed, right? I think
yeah,
another thing, you know, I think there's the whole low code, no code movement, right?
yeah,
And so beyond just that buzzword, it's just possible for people to create certain technologies in certain cases where they don't have to know as much about coding, right? But the things that you know about psychology are still going to apply, right? Because even if you don't have to do some of that coding, you'll still need that. And so there are going to be times where things get blurry, right? Oh, do we need a coder or a designer to do this now that this tool does all these things for us, right? That'll be interesting to watch.
yeah.
So there will be some blur there in some cases, but I always believe, there's that quote. Hopefully, I don't get in trouble with Disney, but they say only the Sith deal in absolutes. I believe that was the saying. I think Yoda said it. Um, I'm very much a spectrum type of person. It's like it depends, okay, and that frustrates people. Sometimes they want, yes or no, Randy, and I'm more often than not. I'm like, it depends. Sometimes you want a specialist. Sometimes you want to do more testing. Sometimes, I think you're going to be fine with somebody who's well rounded and can do lots of stuff. So
Yeah.
I hope I answered that question for you there.
Yeah, that totally makes sense, Randy. And I think taking one of your feedback that you gave during your slides is that you always like to take feedbacks for whatever things that you do. You even took feedbacks for the forms that you did. You asked a couple of your friends and they asked to improve. I think we will take a feedback from it. And I have a small test for you, baby. Oh, right.
Why not?
So, I'm gonna pull the test CSharpCorner. Uh, if you can see, can you
Oh,
see my
oh, oh!
screen?
You're sharing. No, hold on. My screen is still maximized here. I'm in like full presentation mode.
Can you see my screen clearly?
It's really
Or is it
blurry.
blurred?
It's so
Oh
blurry. I
yeah,
mean, like I can't see anything.
Let me go ahead and
And in
refresh
fact,
it.
actually, I'll tell you, while you have it blurred like this, sometimes people have a
Yeah.
technique where they blur a screen on purpose. And in
Oh yeah.
usability, they want to see what the eyes are drawn to, right? Because that's
Yeah.
another psychological trick. So you just brought up another example of it is a technique people use to be like, what are the eyes going to be drawn to? But as far as looking at the site more clearly, was there something that you wanted to dig into, or?
Yeah. I'm just gonna pull it once again. So that is the new test site that we have built,
Okay,
right?
I don't
And
see it
and
at the
and
moment. Is it supposed to be up?
yeah, just hang on, just hang on. Let me share it now. Uh, okay, maybe you can see now. Dum, 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 dum. Yeah, can you see?
Okay, yes, I can see that. And yes, I have given C Sharp
Yeah.
Corner some of my feedback in the past. I love to go through websites. I want to be able to help
Yep.
out developers. I want to be able to help out UX
Mm,
people all around the globe. Maybe UX isn't for them, but maybe they see the value of UX. And I want to help them meet them where they are, either give them some advice or go
mm,
through their website, give them
yeah.
a review,
Yeah.
and help them add value.
Yeah.
And I have done some of that for C Sharp Corner in the past. But what is your question?
Yeah.
How do you want to go about this?
Okay, so my question is very simple, Randy. I want to take your feedback. Is what do you think is? I mean, you can, of course, you can go ahead and say, hey, it's a good design. It's being developed very good. What do you think is not good in this design, and how do you think it should be improved? What is one thing that really strikes you, if your eyes, or it stresses you? That just
Okay,
so to
well,
take your
what's
feedback.
stressing me right now is that the text is going in and out of focus, and I'm sure that's not how the website looks to you. I'm trying to see it. I don't know what is going on with the lens. Oh,
Yeah.
well, there's a lot of groups at the top, right?
Hmm.
There's kind of like it's not a strict rule, but like often you want to sort of see if you can keep things around the 5 mark. I think it goes back to how many fingers we have, which is should be
Yeah.
about 10, right? But like the 5 or 6 is kind of like a magic sort of zone. So the menu at the top,
Yeah.
I would try to categorize things a bit more. Okay, so you've got the latest videos, right? Latest is good, right? But you will realize that some people want to consume videos in different ways. They might want to consume it by
Yeah.
topic, right? Social
Yeah.
media, so much. You want your website to feel fresh, like, oh, I came to it yesterday, but I came to it today and something has changed,
Yeah.
right? You want to keep drawing people back. But at the same time, that's one case, right? Some
Yeah.
people might want to dive into it by topic. So you're going to want to make sure that you give people options for doing things differently. Now, I see that you have a calendar of events there, and it's great that you
Yeah.
have that. Now, I would hope that somewheres in here you also do have a calendar view, right? Because why reinvent the calendar? It's not wrong to put it in a list, but some
Yeah.
people may want to do it. And not only that, but you have your calendar of events here. Now, is there a quick way where somebody can put this as a reminder on their calendar when they click on that thing? You don't have to go there
Yeah.
right now,
Yeah.
but that's important. Like, I have seen things where it's not easy to add the event to my calendar, and then I have to add this manual calendar event when I could have just
Yeah.
clicked a button. All right, so
Yeah.
you know it's
Yeah.
blurring
Randy,
out on
that.
me again there.
Okay.
Oh
So
my
yeah,
gosh, I
there
don't
is
know
an
what's
option,
going
right?
on. The what?
Okay. So indeed, there is an option, Randy.
All right,
You
great,
can actually, if you click on that event, you can actually go and save it in your Google Calendar. I'm not
great,
sure if we still have Outlook Calendar,
great.
but yes, that's a great feedback. So just to let you know, our team is actually watching this, right?
Mm-hmm.
The developers team is
Oh
watching
yeah,
it.
I use
So
Google Calendar all the time. I just happen to
yeah,
say like one or the other. It's like usually there's a button you can click on and then it gives you an option to add it to your calendar.
yeah.
And that helps people keep things straight. Now, when you go into the whole time zone thing, um, that's a big confusion for the world right now. And on my website, I have a
Mm,
calendar of events too, and I'm trying to sort of help solve the whole time zone issue, right? Because people have missed events because like they thought it was in
yeah.
their time zone for stuff, and like, well, that's number one way to get users, tell them when the thing actually is so that they know when it is. So our viewers, right? So if you
Yeah.
have some considerations for showing it in at least a couple of different time zones, that can help.
Yeah.
But that is something that I've struggled with, not here per se, but with all this online
Mm,
stuff. You don't want to have
mhm.
people like pull out their time zone converter and be like, if I add 5 and subtract, and
Yeah.
I've even seen cases too where people don't even put a time zone, right? And you're like,
Uh,
it's not
well,
like we're all in our own little cafe in our own little city right now.
yeah. So indeed, that are the features that we do have when we click that event. Maybe that can be brought even on the first page. So indeed, those feedback does make sense. I think the developers team is watching and telling me, Simon, you gave us some good feedbacks of the live show.
Yeah, I'd give you
So
more
I'm,
feedback, but honestly, on my side, I don't know what's going on. It blurs. It's like the compression
yeah,
keeps changing. It's bizarre.
maybe because of the broadcast, it might
Yeah,
be
yeah.
changing a bit. Yeah.
It's playing with my eyes, and I think I might need an eye
Yeah.
exam after this. So, all right.
So Randy, we are moving to, we have almost like 55 minutes done with the live show. I'll have a couple of more questions, then we'll try to wrap it, right? One question that people would like to know is, what is your best skill as a UX designer, and what advice you would like to give someone who's trying to learn these skills? You'd have shared different resources in your
Hmm.
presentation from where they can go and learn it, but what are the things that they should learn at the very first place?
Okay. So, of course, I've got my website, and I've got a group called UX Stars on LinkedIn. The world is welcome to join us there. It's always changing. It's good to learn and network from what people are really saying today. These things can change. And people can have new observations having to do with new technologies. If somebody is going to learn UX, um, there's free courses out there. I have a whole like e-learning section where you can take a UX course for free. I'm not saying it'll teach you every single thing you didn't know. One of my favorite books that will help you at least realize if UX is for you or not is there's a book called "Don't Make Me Think" by Steve Krug. It's one of my favorites. It's very informal. It just very much speaks to you, and it'll give you a good sense of if you're the type of person to dive into this. And it's not going to teach you everything you need to know about you, like what book is, right? But it is a great first taste of sort of looking at the world in a different way. And so, like, read a book like that. I have a whole book
Yeah.
section, but that one is a really great sort of eye opener to everything. The best skill as a UX designer, I would say the best skill as a UX designer is learning to sort of humble yourself and realize that you have to look, it's important what you think, right? But it is also important to look outside of yourself for the truth. I would say that UX is a quest for the truth about how the things that you create will really affect people, right? It's not just about completing, the project, checking off the box. If you, are going to be doing this and you're going to be a user advocate, you are going to want the truth and you're going to want to find all kinds of ways to investigate and find that out.
That's well said, Randy. That
Thank you.
that that indeed tells the years of experience that you're bringing in this live show.
All
So
right.
that's great to learn, Randy. I think it's time to wrap now. Any last words that you would say? We had an incredible last 50-55 minutes. Any
No,
last
just
words
thank you
that?
for having me on. I appreciate
Yeah,
working with your website and
yeah.
and you guys and Mahesh and trying to help make everything better for everyone as
Yeah.
as things evolve.
Yes, I tried aligning with you.
See you
I took the
online,
same
folks.
cab.
Yeah, no, I know. I almost said
I,
something, but all right, I've already had an influence. Great.
So just to make sure that the user experience
Yeah,
remains same from both the
really.
from both the host
Yeah,
and
no,
the
but no,
guest.
it's gonna be like that.
So maybe like
All right, I'll see you
all
guys
right.
online.
All
All
right,
right.
Randy. Thank you so much for your time. It was a really incredible session. For all the time you have given me. So from entire C Sharp Corner and its millions of users, I want to thank you for your time and the knowledge you have shared. We would love to have you back once again on our C Sharp Corner show. Thank you so
Awesome.
much.
All right. Have a good day. Bye bye.
Bye bye.